Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel's Descendants of Gods and Demons. Chapter 61. Ha ha ha. After hearing Lu Yu's words, Chen Zai's shoulders shook greatly, and his hoarse laughter seemed very hysterical. Your ridiculous and arrogant character really makes me miss you a little. It's just. I know what you are going to say, ignorance. Ignorance. It's almost the same vocabulary anyway. Lu Yu pouted and interrupted Chen Shi again. He raised his finger and pointed in the direction of the door. Believe me, as long as you say it, I'll walk you out the door, very politely. In Lu Yu's view, although he and Chen Shi were the same person at different points in time, they were two completely different individuals. He could not be so generous as to tolerate Chen Zai's repeated ridicule. You can't even imagine what terrible things will happen in the future. Chen Shi paid attention to Lu Yu's warning. He looked at Lu Yu with eyes full of pity and slowly turned around Lu Yu's body. You have no way of understanding what kind of despair I have experienced. Chen Zai's words were heard in Lu Yu's ears, but they failed to change Lu Yu's expression at all. He looked at Chen Shi expressionlessly and said in a slightly mocking tone, "We are making a deal now, not participating in some talent show. We can't let you take away the helmet if we compete to see who is worse." Chen Zai's footsteps stopped. An intense purple light burst out from his eyes. It quickly spread out around Chen Shi like a wave, coloring the surrounding space layer by layer with purple. The swimming of the ornamental fish in the water tank stopped suddenly, and its body stopped while keeping its mouth open. The sound of wind blowing throughout the living room, the shining of light, and even the scene outside the window disappeared without a trace at this moment. The time and space in this room are temporarily cut out from your timeline. Chen Shi explained to Lu Yu, who was looking around, this is just a very basic application of our variant ability. Only in this way, what happened to us here will not be affected by cause and effect, and will be corrected by the timeline after I leave. Chen Zai's eyes flickered, and the space in front of him suddenly shattered like a floor-to-ceiling mirror, and appeared a space crack about 10 centimeters long. I'll use this thing. Chen Shi reached into the space crack and took out a file-sized iron box from it and handed it to Lu Yu. Let's exchange for Magneto's helmet. What's this? Lu Yu took the iron box and saw a password keyboard on it, and entered the birthday of his previous life without any hesitation. Quote. The small light on the iron box lit up green, and then with a click sound, the lid of the iron box slowly rotated half a turn to the side, revealing the contents inside. I named it Nightmare Tyrant. Chen Shi said solemnly, it is a body-strengthening agent that was just developed by a cutting-edge laboratory at my time. I have indeed obtained the information on the super soldier serum. Lu Yu took out the test tube from the iron box and said, I hope the effect of your strengthening agent will live up to the style of my naming. Quote. Will not disappoint you. This is by no means a super soldier serum that can compare to a strengthening agent. Chen Zai's lips evoked a very proud and evil smile. It is the result of decades of research in cutting-edge laboratories, and the strengtheners created are called devourers. The devourer? Lu Yu asked doubtfully. Chen Shi nodded and said with a serious expression, if you can set up a cutting-edge laboratory as soon as possible and decipher this potion within 5 years, you will have a team of devourers who are absolutely loyal to you in the future. Army. After a pause, Chen Shi continued, people who have been injected with this medicine can obtain the enemy's mutant ability by sucking a large amount of the enemy's blood. The upper limit is anywhere from 5 to 10 abilities. At this moment, the purple light that enveloped the entire space suddenly began to shake. Chen Shi stopped explaining and frowned, and said in a somewhat anxious tone, how about it? You can hand Magneto's helmet to me now. You can go get it now. Lu Yu was very satisfied with the strengthening agent given by Chen Shi, but he was still a little dissatisfied and asked, why don't you just give me the research information? If the cutting-edge laboratory still exists in my timeline, I will give it to you. The purple light began to shrink slowly, and Chen Shi quickly walked to a wall in the living room and took the magneto from the hidden compartment inside. He took out his helmet and said, in fact, the one in your hand is the last 10 I have left. Lu Yu nodded. He saw Chen Shi holding the helmet with a happy face, and asked curiously, do you think this helmet can save your life? As far as I know, it only blocks mind control. Chen Shi did not answer Lu Yu directly, but after putting the helmet into the space crack, he said to Lu Yu cautiously, it can save many people's lives. The purple light shrouding the surroundings violently accelerated its contraction, and all the light returned to Chen Zai's body. Lu Yu didn't know if he had an illusion. He found that the patterns on Chen Zai's face were a little darker, making Chen Zai's face look even more charming. It's time for me to leave. Chen Shi took a long breath and said with some melancholy, "For me now, time is never enough. Although I can't tell you much." Chen Shi walked to the door, suddenly stopped, and turned back to look at Lu Yu with complicated eyes, "But I still hope that you can have the ability to stop my timeline. The birth of. You've been warning me constantly." Lu Yu raised his hand and pointed the test tube in his hand at the sunlight shining into the living room outside the window. The bright red liquid inside, like blood, was shaking constantly. "I didn't say, okay. To ignore. Those who fool time will eventually be fooled by time. I can't know too much about the future, right? I will grant your single-minded death wish." Lu Yu put down his hand, and his eyes collided with Chen's eyes in the air again. "In fact, your so-called future has become the past on my timeline when you stand in front of me." Quote. Chen Shi was silent for a long time, then said in a hoarse voice, "You can nip the danger in the cradle that I can warn you about." "You mean Charles?" Lu Yu shook his head and sat back on the sofa. "I have my own ideas and don't need your advice. You are just a miserable loser." Lu Yu spread his hand, pointed at himself, and said with confidence, "And I am the one destined to win a glorious victory. We two are different." Lu Yu had already played with the body-strengthening agent, which he named Devouring Potion, in his hand for several hours. He was thinking about some of the information Chen Shi revealed in his mind. Judging from what Chen Shi said when giving him the potion, although the cutting-edge laboratory in the future has produced the devouring potion, it is likely that due to time constraints, it has not been able to form a large-scale devouring army. Chen Shi told Lu Yu that only by replicating the devouring potion within 5 years could Lu Yu have a chance to form the devouring legion. Chen Shi said this, either because the devourer injected with the devouring potion still needs a long time to accumulate before it can have considerable combat effectiveness. Either the war occurred not far from 5 years later. All in all, no matter what the situation was, Chen Shi was reminding Lu Yu that he should seize all the time and make the swallowing potion as soon as possible. Chen Shi took out the devouring potion to make a deal with Lu Yu simply because of its great value. The Devourer army may very well be the key to winning future wars. What makes Lu Yu a little confused is that even if Chen Shi only has a small group of Devourers, Team 940, it can be said to be a very good combat force. Think about it, a group of people whose bodies are indestructible, who can spray water, fire, fly through walls, and fly into the sky, how terrifying the combat power they can create. With a group of such powerful subordinates and the power of more than 1 or 2 gods, Chen Shi was still left alone by the brutal war and ran back to the past to seek help. Who is the enemy? It is so powerful that it cannot be as simple as the Sentinel in the end of Mutant. Cosmic God. Galactus. Annihilation. Lu Yu's brows furrowed. Although his current strength is not enough, he can also feel that every divine inheritance he inherited exists, but it is independent from the Marvel world and has its own latitude law. It is absolutely there cannot be only multi-universe level power. Not to mention the gods of the universe, even the life court cannot force Chen Shi, who is Lu Yu's future, to that level. In the brief meeting with Chen Shi, Lu Yu did not ask about the future war, and Chen Shi did not say too much. Because changing the time without authorization (ADFD) is very likely to make the future worse. The law of time is like the gods and cannot be blasphemed. Lu Yu couldn't imagine how bad Chen Shi had been before he chose to go back to the past to remind himself. Although there was no way to deduce too much useful information, Lu Yu could still vaguely guess that the reason why Chen Shi was in such a mess must be related to the purple pattern of the demon fruit on his body. Well, Lu Yu sighed heavily. He was not worried about the future. The future shown by Chen Shi did not make Lu Yu worry much. No god will be afraid of the challenge of fate. Now that he knows what fate has arranged for him, Lu Yu believes that he will be able to reverse the situation and make Chen Zai's failed timeline disappear into the infinite latitudes. This is not arrogance, but confidence. What he was worried about was what Chen Shi said. The purple patterns on his body and the pain they caused him were all caused by Charles and Yi Academy. This made Lu Yu feel extremely heavy in his heart. The reason why he didn't show it when he faced Chen Shi just now was because he was not used to showing his true emotions in front of others. Charles. Professor. Lu Yu slowly closed her eyes, her mind filled with chaos, all about her past at Xavier's school. Is it because the professor's mental power went out of control in Wolverine 3 inches and killed most of the people in Xavier's school that made Chen Shi resent Charles so much? Lu Yu couldn't help but fall into doubts. At this time, the doorbell suddenly rang again outside the door. Lu Yu had no choice but to stop thinking, put the swallowing potion in the hidden compartment in the living room, exhaled to adjust his mentality, then walked to the door and opened it. Sir, this is the invitation letter from my boss. A fat man in a fat suit bowed his head slightly and handed the invitation letter to Lu Yu respectfully. What is Tony trying to do? Lu Yu knew this fat man. His name was Hogan, and he was Tony's driver and bodyguard for many years. After Tony became Iron Man, Hogan's job became dispensable. But because the two were good friends with a romantic relationship, Tony did not choose to fire Hogan, but asked him to help with small things such as running errands. Lu Yu opened the beautifully crafted invitation with some confusion, and a picture of a sexy beauty with a hot figure appeared in front of him. Below the picture was written by Ri Xingqian himself. Dear Prince, I sincerely invite you to attend the birthday party held tonight at my home on Malibu Street. There will be countless celebrities and ladies coming to join in the fun. I believe you will be able to handle them. The language is exaggerated, and there is an air of luxury between the lines. It's really Tony's style of banquet, a playboy who can never do without women. Lu Yu curled her lips and said helplessly to Hogan, tell Tony for me that I will go, and there are some things to think about. Talk to him. I will tell my boss exactly what he said. Hogan bowed lightly to Lu Yu, and then walked towards the Rolls-Royce he drove out. After Hogan left, Lu Yu returned to the room, picked up the devouring potion, put it in his pocket, and then left his villa. He planned to use the swallowing potion as one of the bargaining chips to invite Zhao Helen to work for him. After all, the more powerful the person, the less resistant he was to advanced technology. Lu Yu must ensure that he invites Helen Zhao as quickly as possible, because the establishment of a cutting-edge laboratory has reached the point where it is urgent to delay. Driving the newly purchased Porsche supercar all the way, Lu Yu sped towards the address given by Tony. Just over half an hour's drive later, Lu Yu saw Tony's circular villa from a distance. It is large in scale and majestic like a small museum. Lu Yu knew that many of Tony's technological experiments were conducted in this villa. The things in the basement below this villa can drive countless capitalists and scientific researchers crazy. As soon as he parked his car in the open-air parking lot in front of the villa, Lu Yu saw Tony wearing a steel battle suit, very sexy. He was standing in front of the sea blowing the sea breeze, holding a bag of donuts in his hand and eating non-stop. In the villa hall filled with heavy metal music, colorful neon lights flashed, and men and women swayed in it. Neatly dressed waiters pushed carts through the crowd. On their carts were placed valuable wines and various foods for the people at the dance to take as they passed by. This luxurious atmosphere is always the main theme of Tony's dance party. Lu Yu didn't come here to indulge himself and make friends, so he didn't like the so-called socialites and Wall Street elites who chattered like flies. He sat in an inconspicuous place, holding a glass of red wine and shaking it in his hand. The liquid inside kept rotating, forming a vortex in the flow. Welcome to my birthday party. Tony, wearing a straight suit and holding a microphone in his hand, walked to the high platform in the center of the hall with high spirits. I am your friend, Tony Stark. Iron Man. Iron Man. People's excited shouts came from below the high platform, shouting Tony's other name loudly. It seems that Iron Man is very popular. Tony pretended to be very helpless and said in a low tone, you really don't need to worship me so much. I'm just an ordinary person. I get sick and need to eat. I like to talk to him. Beauty sleeps. It's not a big deal for me. Tony paused, suddenly changed the subject, and said in a high voice, I just protected the safety of the people across the country. The crowd's shouts for Iron Man rang out again, much louder than before. Mixed with the rock music playing in the background, the whole hall seemed extremely noisy. Lu Yu, who was sitting in the corner, frowned slightly. He was originally thinking about whether he needed to go back to Xavier's school, but this chaotic voice disrupted his thoughts. Definitely. After the shouting slowly died down, Tony picked up the microphone he put down again. It may also be the safety of everyone in the world. Iron Man, I love you. Iron Man, you are good. Hearing the people below shouting even more intensely, Tony had a proud look on his face. What he wanted was the explosive effect of the atmosphere. Surrounded by everyone, liked by everyone, adored by everyone. Not only is he rich, handsome, charming, and brilliant, but he also has great strength. He feels that he is the protagonist in real life. Tony closed his eyes, enjoying the feeling. It's just that God didn't seem to want to fulfill his wish. A voice that was incompatible with the surrounding atmosphere and full of doubts suddenly sounded. Sorry, I have to interrupt you. As far as I know, you seem to have just been slapped in the face with a morning whip at the racing track. Tony opened his eyes angrily and looked in the direction of the sound. He vowed that he would teach this guy a lesson. How dare you ridicule him on such an occasion? Don't you know that Iron Man is a vengeful master? Tony looked for a target in the crowd angrily, but when he saw Lu Yu standing up from the corner, his momentum instantly dropped. Are you talking about Ivan Vanki? Tony held the microphone to Lu Yu, with a very embarrassed expression on his face. The title of Ming Whip is not bad, very appropriate. When Tony saw that the person speaking was Lu Yu, he no longer had any thoughts of revenge. In front of Lu Yu, he has never taken advantage. Lu Yu is like his natural nemesis, always able to lead him by the nose. He is a smart man, but he doesn't want to bring trouble to himself. The guy who wielded the iron whip and wanted to find something for Iron Man was indeed a genius. I admit it. He caught me off guard. Tony tried to stir up the somewhat cold situation again, but what he came up with on the spur of the moment failed. It's a bit far-fetched. But in the end I defeated him and sent him to where he should be. The people below started screaming again, but not as loudly as before. They were all die-hard Iron Man fans. Okay, without further ado, let's get into today's topic. I announce that the carnival has begun. Tony handed the microphone in his hand to the host, quickly walked down from the high platform and walked towards Lu Yu. My friend, when you stir up trouble like this, you make me feel like I'm facing those reporters. Tony said with a slight sarcasm in his tone. They are always grabbing my pigtails like this, trying to make a big deal out of me. News. You know the newspaper can't afford my salary. Lu Yu shrugged helplessly and said, I just don't like the way you act cool on it. What you said really makes me sad. Tony picked up a glass of champagne from the passing car and clinked the glasses with Lu Yu. You know, in order to help you find someone, I sacrificed my date with many famous models. Time. Have you contacted Helen Zhao? Lu Yu raised his eyebrows, with a smile on his lips. It seems that my guess was right. When he received Tony's invitation, Lu Yu guessed why Tony invited him to the birthday party, so before he left, he brought the devouring potion to persuade Helen Zhao to work for him. You don't know everything. Tony raised his glass and pointed in a direction. For example, the real owner was waiting for you over there, but you had been drinking alone here for a long time. Lu Yu looked in the direction of Tony's finger. A beautiful woman in a white evening dress was sitting on a sofa. As if she couldn't hear the noisy sounds around her, she buried her head in her hands. What is written in the notebook? She would frown from time to time, as if she was thinking about some difficult problem, which formed a very sharp contrast with the group of men and women around her who looked crazy and kept twisting and turning. That serious and focused face is full of a different kind of beauty. This person is Helen Zhao, a PhD in biology with extraordinary ability. Even at the dance party held by Tony, everyone was still obsessed with her academics in a wanton and indulgent environment. I found the person you wanted for you, and the rest is all your business. Tony put the wine glass on a metal shelf and gave Lu Yu an, I'm optimistic about you, expression. I've always believed that women are easier to deal with than children as long as you do what you want. I wish you success in 277. Tony walked up to a sexy supermodel who was walking towards him with a flattering look on his face, and waved his hand with his back to Lu Yu. Follow him. Lu Yu pouted. He definitely understood what Tony said. Otherwise, why would he bring the swallowing potion to the dance? It was just because the swallowing potion could interest Helen Zhao. I can also confuse others. Lu Yu chuckled lightly, picked up 2 glasses of juice from a cart, walked to the sofa opposite Zhao Helen and sat down. You really stand out in the crowd. Lu Yu handed a glass of juice in front of Zhao Hailun, wondering why he didn't get excited with everyone else. Quote. Suddenly a glass of juice appeared in his field of vision, startling Zhao Hailun, who was concentrating on writing the formula. She raised her head and saw a handsome man sitting opposite her, stretching out a hand holding juice and smiling at her. Sir, we don't seem to be familiar with each other. Helen Zhao took the juice very politely and said with a hint of doubt in her tone. She searched through her memory, but couldn't find any image of Lu Yu. Yeah, but if we get to know each other now. Lu Yu smiled and raised his glass to Zhao Helen. We will be acquaintances next time we meet. You are Tony's friend, right? Helen Zhao touched Lu Yu with a juice cup. You two are so in tune with each other and your conversational methods are the same old-fashioned way. It's old-fashioned because time has proven that it is absolutely practical, right? Lu Yu said with an unchanging smile. Tony and I are partners, but I am not a playboy like him. He also often told women that he was not a playboy, but 80% of the women he heard were in his bed at night. After taking a sip of juice, Helen Zhao said very seriously, if you are also looking for a bed partner, I advise you to choose your next target early, because I will not sleep with you. Lu Yu didn't expect that Helen Zhao would speak so directly, which made him slightly shocked. However, after thinking about the work that Helen Zhao was doing, Lu Yu felt a little relieved. After all, as a PhD in biology, Zhao Hailun must have seen these 10 aspects more thoroughly than most people. Maybe in Zhao Helen's eyes, the matter between men and women is no different from the mating of animals such as orangutans, which is just for the continuation of the race. Okay, I think you have some misunderstandings about me. Lu Yu said in a dumbfounded voice, I have no such intention towards you. Helen Zhao nodded noncommittally, not sure whether she believed what Lu Yu said. I'm not one of those socialites who want to hang out with rich people. I actually hate this kind of messy situation. If Tony hadn't told me about a seriously ill person, if the old man wants to see me one last time before he dies, I will definitely not appear here. Tony actually said that I am a seriously ill old man. Lu Yu's eyes widened in disbelief, or the one who is about to die. Lu Yu really didn't expect that Tony would say this to Helen Zhao. She had to hate him so much that she would disgust him in this way. Helen Zhao's mouth opened slightly, and she looked very surprised. Are you the one who wants to see me? She has a very high IQ, but she understood the information revealed in Lu Yu's words in an instant. If there is no other person who wants to see you. Lu Yu shrugged helplessly, then I'm right. I still underestimated Tony's shamelessness. Helen Zhao looked very annoyed. The word character has nothing to do with him. I think the same as you. Lu Yu nodded in agreement. Helen Zhao rolled her eyes at Lu Yu angrily. If it weren't for you, how could I have been fooled by this? In fact, I don't think you will regret coming to the United States to see me this time. Lu Yu did not care about Zhao Hailun's attitude, but showed a meaningful smile to Zhao Hailun, because, I can let you take your career to a new level. What you said is a bit big. Zhao Helen didn't believe it, but still asked curiously, what is the reliance you are talking about? Super Soldier Serum. You should have heard of Zero. Lu Yu leaned forward slightly, staring closely into Zhao Helen's eyes. I will give you a chance to reappear in the world. A strengthening agent that directly unlocks the maximum potential of the human body and can directly turn ordinary people into super soldiers. Zhao Hailun nodded slowly and frowned. I admit that this makes me a little tempted, but forgive me. Frankly speaking, I have seen the fragmentary pages of Tony's information, and they are so missing that no one will be able to complete them within a few decades. I have another broken page in my hand. Lu Yu raised a slight smile at the corner of his mouth. I will get another copy within 5 days at most. If it's similar to the number of broken pages in Tony's hand, it will only take 10 years. Helen Zhao pursed her lips, with a hint of hesitation in her eyes. It takes 10 years to replicate the super soldier serum, which is still very attractive to her. Lu Yu felt reassured when he saw Zhao Helen's reaction. He did not expect that Zhao Helen would be shaken so easily. 10 years. No, it doesn't take that long. Lu Yu chuckled and continued to increase the stakes and said, I have a failure that is very close to success. You only need to eliminate its side effects, and it will be more effective than the super soldier serum. Excellent strengthening agent. Zhao Helen's eyes lit up, but the next moment she was full of doubts. Why choose me? I believe that as long as you announce this news, there will definitely be countless experts better than me coming to you. Don't underestimate yourself. Lu Yu looked at Helen Zhao deeply and said meaningfully, I know how talented you are, and I also know what achievements you can achieve. 2.0. The super soldier serum is just a trivial gift from me. Lu Yu stood up from the sofa and walked to Zhao Helen. A person as good as you will never be willing to spend his whole life because of the limitations of the times. We can only sadly study creatures like humans, orangutans, and eagles. I don't know what you want to express. Zhao Helen raised her head in surprise and looked at Lu Yu standing in front of her. If you don't study these, how can you still study aliens? You have to answer me first. Lu Yu stared at Helen Zhao very seriously and said seriously, do you want to unlock the secret of the super soldier serum and get that glory? No biologist will refuse the conditions you propose. Zhao Hailun smiled, then stood up and extended her hand to Lu Yu. The question I am most concerned about is, what do I want? Time to start work, boss. Zhao Hailun told Lu Yu that she needed to return to China to make some preparations, so she chose to leave in the middle of the dance. She didn't even say goodbye to her friend Tony. It seemed that even though she accepted Lu Yu's job, she still had strong objections to Tony for tricking her into coming to the United States. I think I need an explanation. Lu Yu walked up to Tony, who was flirting with a sexy beauty, knocked on the table in front of Tony, and said with an unhappy look on his face, when did I become a dying old man? Quote. Seeing that the situation was not good, the sexy beauty turned around and walked away silently. Baby, don't leave in such a hurry, wait for me. Tony pretended not to hear what Lu Yu said, shouted at the sexy beauty's back, and planned to catch up, but was pulled away by Lu Yu's return. Tony couldn't break free from Lu Yu's iron-like arms, so he gave up his plan to escape and said helplessly, I just made a little joke, I will make it up to you. How about finding some Hollywood actresses for you? I'm not an animal that thinks in the lower body like you. I want your information on the O3 Super Soldier Serum. Lu Yu's slumped face suddenly relaxed and he chuckled, and the source of JARVIS code. Are you kidding me? Tony opened his mouth in surprise and said in disbelief, you must not have woken up in the morning, otherwise how could you say such ridiculous things? As we all know, Tony doesn't care much about many of the technologies he invented, but only the steel armor and artificial intelligence have never leaked any core information. One is his symbol as Iron Man, and the other is his indispensable assistant and the foundation of his life. Lu Yu suddenly asked for it, which made him feel that it was not what Lu Yu did as a smart person. I just want these two things, and I'm sure you will give them to me. Lu Yu nodded solemnly and said in a very serious tone. Tony stared into Lu Yu's eyes and was silent for a while, then frowned and said, I can give you the information on the super soldier serum. Anyway, it is no different from useless paper here. Lu Yu shook his head very dissatisfied. You know I want to set up a laboratory. Having an artificial intelligence can save a lot of time. Lu Yu leaned close to Tony's ear and whispered, if you give me the source code, how about I give you a message? After hearing what Lu Yu said, Tony leaned into Lu Yu's ear and taunted in a low voice, it seems that your memory is not very good either. You forgot that I said I would never do business with you again. I don't think you have any information that can match the value of the JARVIS source code. It's not up to you to decide whether to make a deal or not. Lu Yu leaned into Tony's ear again, this time even covering his mouth with his hands. The real inside story about the car accident on December 16, 1991, I think you won't miss it. Tony froze on the spot. His chest seemed to have been hit hard, and his whole body felt like he couldn't breathe. He definitely knew what date December 16, 1991 was. It was Mr. and Mrs. Howard Stark, which was also the date when his parents died in a car accident. Lu Yu actually told him that there was something inside. Could it be that the cause of his parents' death was not just a simple car accident? Tony's eyes flickered non-stop. He stared at Lu Yu's face, smiling at him, trying to find any trace of lying on Lu Yu's face. When are you going to give me the source code of JARVIS? Lu Yu said with strong confidence in his tone, and he was very sure that Tony would definitely agree to his request. Although Tony has been pretending not to care about his parents on the surface, Lu Yu, who is familiar with Marvel, knows that Tony just hides his love for his parents deeply. Okay, you win. I'll sort it out and send it to your house tomorrow. Tony gritted his teeth and said to Lu Yu, if you tell me that you are a despicable devil, I think I will never have any regrets. Suspect. Come on, you're not a gentleman either. Lu Yu shrugged nonchalantly. Originally, he didn't intend to use this news to blackmail Tony, but who told Tony to insist on committing suicide and want to disgust Lu Yu? Lu Yu has always been the only one who deceives others, so why should others deceive him? Since I was accidentally tricked by Tony, I will definitely try to trick him twice as hard. Go home and check Bucky Barnes, preferably the hidden videos. Lu Yu covered her mouth again and said in Tony's ear, you will make very surprising discoveries. Remember what you promised me. After saying this, Lu Yu walked towards the door of the villa without looking back, leaving Tuyong standing there with a complicated expression. He wanted to call Lu Yu to stop and then continue to ask questions. But after thinking about the way Lu Yu spoke, he knew that this would never be an appropriate move. There must be some person or organization at this dance who doesn't want him to know the truth. Tony's clenched fists kept shaking. He had already guessed the hidden video Lu Yu mentioned and where to trace it. Driving a sports car, Lu Yu sped down the hillside where the villa was located at a speed of 200 miles and entered the national highway. At 8 or 9 o'clock, although the traffic volume on the entire national highway was still relatively large, Lu Yu did not choose to slow down. Instead, he increased his speed again, passing through the passing vehicles like a stream of light. Everything went very smoothly today. He even got something from Tony that he had been planning for a long time. This made Lu Yu feel extremely comfortable and couldn't help but sing his favorite song, song. How lonely it is to be invincible. Boom, boom, boom. A deafening series of explosions suddenly sounded far ahead. Many vehicles hurriedly stepped on the brakes because of this unexpected incident. Bang, bang, bang. 483 because some drivers responded slowly and some quickly, the sound of rear-end collisions was heard on the entire highway after the explosion. The drivers who got out of their cars to check the damage to their vehicles did not bother to curse each other, but looked at the sky in the distance in great horror. Thousands of meters away in the sky, countless secret numbing dots are constantly and rapidly enlarging. It only took a moment for people to see these small dots. They are war mechas with a full metallic texture. During their flight, they will throw bombs on the ground from time to time. The explosion just now was the sound made by these bombs after they landed. Oh my god. What monsters are those? The speed of the war mecha is so fast that no pedestrians or vehicles can escape the bomb attack. As long as they fly over, the ground will basically be enveloped by explosions. The car wreckage and human body fragments were blown into the air with the airwaves set off by the explosion. Oh my god. The end of the world is coming. Some people were so frightened that they collapsed on the ground and closed their eyes in despair. Countless war mechas, surrounded by a larger and more powerful-looking mecha, flew towards Lu Yu. This is Mangbian and the mecha army he created. Lu Yu sat in the sports car and looked at the scene outside in horror. A word suddenly popped up in his heart. The butterfly effect. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.